Hello, I'm Julia Fisher. Welcome to this week's edition of The Olive Tree, the programme that takes you to meet believers living in the land of Israel, both Jews and Arabs, to hear their stories and find out what God is doing there, especially in the area of reconciliation. Today, my guest is Joshua Pex. Born in Eilat in southern Israel to a Jewish mother and a Dutch father, after serving his statutory time in the Israeli army, he went to study law at university, and today he works for a large law firm in Jerusalem, where he specialises in human rights, social justice, and religious freedom in Israel. He's married to Sarah, a social worker, and it's perhaps because of meeting Sarah that he was first introduced to an aspect of Israeli society that lies largely hidden from view: sex trafficking. Over the next 2 weeks, we're going to follow Joshua's story to hear how he and Sarah are attempting to help women who find themselves in this unhappy position. When I met Joshua in Jerusalem, he told me how he first became aware, through his wife's work, of the extent of slavery and sex trafficking in Israel today.
Even during the days that I was dating with my wife Sarah, I would hear about her work that involved street people, especially women, and especially women who are addicted to drugs and are in prostitution. And she works in Tel Aviv. And even though I was always interested in issues of human rights and law, this particular issue was something that was very far from me. Like many other people in Israel, you hear very little about this phenomena. If you're not in the right places, this whole issue is very much sort of suppressed. It's not something that you know about. During the time I was dating her, I was sort of introduced into the subject, and I was very impressed personally from what she was doing and the calling she had and the heart she had for these women. One day she took me on a sort of visit or tour, you can call it, in these areas in the heart of Tel Aviv. It's a particular neighborhood that's really like a slum. And this neighborhood is very close to other neighborhoods that are with skyscrapers, tall buildings, very rich areas. But right in the heart of Tel Aviv, you have an area where, when I was there, I was really shocked. You see people on the streets, you see sort of an atmosphere of violence and of fear, people walking around. To me, they seemed like zombies addicted to drugs, or the men walking around looking for prostitutes, women, and everything is very much in the open, very clear to me. It was something shocking on a personal level. And I thought, how is it that this is going on like this?
You also realised there was a lot of sex trafficking going on.
Yes, this was the first visit, sort of, and days I was still a student, and I didn't think ever, actually, that I would be involved in working this issue personally. But gradually, after we got married, I became a lawyer. All this time I had it in the back of my mind that something needs to be done, but what can I do as a lawyer? I'm not a social worker. But gradually I learned from Sarah that there is a need for combating the trafficking and also giving legal assistance to some of these women.
So they're here without any papers, they're brought in illegally. Can you give me a typical story of one such woman?
Yes, I can give you sort of what we call a classic story, and this is one of the cases we are taking care of. We can call the woman Yelena, and this is not a real name, but like many of the women, she's from the Eastern Soviet Union. And Yelena grew up in the former Soviet Union to a very difficult family, very poor and hardship. Already as a child, she was abused. And when she grew up, she got into bad relationships. She was very insecure about herself. But then, through one of her boyfriends, she heard that it would be possible to go to a different country, a Western country, and work and taking care of old people. and make a living, support some of her family. So she thought, yes, this is an opportunity. So this is what would happen to many of the women that were brought to Israel. They were sort of lured into this trap in the late 90s or in the beginning of the year around 2000. So what happened is these women like Elena, they were brought to Egypt, and then they were just smuggled across the border illegally. And on the way, they would be beaten and raped. Terrible, hard time. By the time they would arrive in Tel Aviv, they would be so exhausted and tired. And then they would meet their pimp and would be sort of enslaved into prostitution. So this is what happened to her. Even when she says that even when she came to the apartment where she was supposed to work in prostitution, until then, even though she went through all these things on the way, she still believed that she would be taking care of old people. But then she was kept in this apartment for about a year, and having, forced into sex with many men each day, every day, with no vacation. And the pimp would tell her that the money he paid for her doesn't even cover what she earns, so she wasn't even given money. Always been told that yes, you're going to get money in the future. After a while, one of her clients decided that he liked her, and he would buy her from the pimp. And that's what happened. She thought it would be okay. She didn't think anything could be worse than what is happening to her at the moment. So she was bought for a few $1,000s from the pimp to the client. And actually the situation with this man that was now her partner was even worse. He was very abusive to her, physically, verbally. But she did get pregnant with him, and she had a boy, which is now 5 years old. But after a while, the relationship with the man sort of fell apart. He was into criminal activities, so he was arrested and things like that. So they got apart, and then she went back into prostitution, but this time more or less of her own will, because she thought, this is what I know. You have to realize that some of these women, they really somehow adopt the stigma that society tells them, that you're no good, this is all you can do, this is the way that you can earn money. So she went back into prostitution, and that's when Sarah, my wife, met her in one of the brothels. She met her, this is already a few years ago, and at the beginning she wasn't interested into talking. She told Sarah that, no, I'm here of my own will, this is what I want to do, I'm earning money. It's not like before that I was forced. Now I'm doing it, and I can earn some money and send it back, and I'm taking care of my son. So slowly, as Sarah started counseling her and meeting her on a more regular basis, this woman opened up to Sarah and told her about what she went through. She told her about her childhood. As a young child, she was abused sexually by people in her family, and that she wants something else. She wants to change, but she doesn't know if she can. So over the years, really a long process of 2 or 3 years, she decided to leave prostitution, and Sarah found a shelter for her, and that's where she is today. Today she's in a shelter. She's working in a very hard manual labor. Basically, she's cleaning floors of a community center. She's working 5 hours a day. She's earning the minimum wage, but she's so far she's content. She takes her son to school every day. He's 5 years old, and she's in a totally different place in life. If you talk to her today, you feel like you're talking to a assertive person that knows who she is and has made a great change in her life. She's also began recently going to meetings. She met up with a fellowship community in the area, and she's going there once in a while, and we hope that this will even be further development in her life.
Joshua Pex, a lawyer in Jerusalem who, along with his wife Sarah, are Jewish believers in Jesus who are trying to help women enslaved in the sex trafficking business in Israel. And you're listening to The Olive Tree with me, Julia Fisher, the programme that brings you stories of reconciliation direct from the Holy Land, from both Jewish and Palestinian Christians. Next week, we'll hear more about Joshua and Sarah's work and the organisation they have set up. But of course, representing people in courts of law is an expensive business, especially when those people have no money or resources of their own. That's where the Olive Tree Reconciliation Fund can help, a small charity based in the UK that supports needy Arab and Jewish believers. You'll find information on our website, www.olivetreefund.org, including news about our next tour to Israel. If you'd like to receive our free bi-monthly newsletter, please either email inquiries@olivetreefund.org or write to me, Julia Fisher, at the Olive Tree Reconciliation Fund, P.O. Box 850, Horsham, RH12, 9GA in the UK. Join me at the same time next week for another story from the Olive Tree. Until then, goodbye.